The 18-year-old high school senior was gunned down yesterday afternoon on Essex Street. Jonathan Hunter is live in Albany with our follow-up report. Jonathan?
Yes, good evening, Mark and Benita. This is a very sad situation indeed. Chyna Forney, she was 18 years old. She had her whole life ahead of her. She had plans to graduate from Albany Leadership Charter School for Girls and wanted to go on to study nursing.
Take the defendant back to the holding cell. The judge's voice thundered through the courtroom as Alvin Foy III was dragged away. His crime? Laughing while the sister of the girl he murdered read her impact statement. May 3, 2021, Essex Street, Albany. What started as an ordinary Monday afternoon ended with over 40 shell casings scattered across the pavement and 18-year-old Chyna Forney lying in the road with a bullet in her back. 3 weeks from graduation, McDonald's manager at just 18, dance team captain, track star, future nurse, gone in seconds. But that's not even the most shocking part of this story. 2 years later, as her devastated family sought justice, they'd face something no grieving family should ever experience, watching their daughter's killer mock their pain right in front of them. The judge called it what it was. Any individual with a shred of human decency would not laugh. Welcome to True Crime Malice, where we uncover the darkest moments in our justice system. Have you ever witnessed shocking behavior in a courtroom? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Now, let's dive into the heartbreaking story of Chyna Forney, the bright young star whose life was cut tragically short. Before she became a headline, before her name was read in court documents, Chyna Unique Forney was exactly that. Unique. Born January 11, 2003 to Shannon Forney and Michael Anderson Sr., she lit up every room she entered with what her family called that smile. The kind that made you smile back without even thinking. Growing up in Albany, New York, Chyna was surrounded by love. Though her father passed away before her, she had a strong support system. Her mother Shannon, two special father figures, Patrick Dozier and Kareem Birthright, her sister Nazare, brothers Navion and Michael Jr., plus a large extended family who adored her. She was definitely the life of the party, her mother would later say. Not just empty words, anyone who knew Chyna would tell you the same thing. That girl had presence. At Albany Leadership Charter High School for Girls, Chyna wasn't just another student. She was the girl who made things happen. The one teachers pointed to when they wanted to show what determination looked like. But Chyna's ambition went beyond the classroom. At just 14, when most kids are focused on video games and social media, she landed her first job with summer youth for the city of Albany. Later, she started working at McDonald's, where her work ethic didn't go unnoticed. By 18, she was already managing shifts, overseeing employees sometimes twice her age. On the dance floor, Chyna was unstoppable. In 2015, she joined the Too Hot For You dance team, becoming captain just a year later. Her teammates described her as fearless, the girl who never backed down from a dance battle and often created routines herself. But dancing wasn't her only passion. In 2013, Chyna joined the Tone Setter Step team, eventually becoming captain in 2017. For 8 years, she poured her heart into this team, creating steps and chants that became their signature moves. To Chyna, the Tone Setters weren't just teammates. They were her sisterhood, her family. Her athletic talents extended to the track as well. Starting with the Just Run program at Arbor Hill Elementary, Chyna developed a love for running that continued throughout high school, where she competed in both indoor and outdoor track for Albany Leadership. With graduation approaching in June 2021, Chyna had big plans. College was next, with dreams of becoming a traveling nurse, a career that perfectly matched her caring nature and desire to see the world while making a difference. On May 1, 2021, Chyna graduated from the Tone Setter Step team after 8 dedicated years. Photos from that day show her beaming, surrounded by friends celebrating this milestone. None of them could have imagined it would be one of her last achievements. 2 days later, on May 3rd, Chyna was just being Chyna, living her life, making plans, probably thinking about graduation just 3 weeks away. She had already accomplished more at 18 than many do in decades. Manager, captain, athlete, daughter, sister, friend. She had no way of knowing that in just hours, everything would change, that she would become another statistic, another victim, another name on the growing list of young lives cut short by senseless gun violence. But before we get to that tragic afternoon on Essex Street, remember this: Chyna Forney lived 18 years of purpose. Her story isn't defined by how it ended, but by how brightly she shined while she was here. Monday, May 3rd, 2021, a spring afternoon in Albany, the kind of day when high school seniors start counting down the final days until graduation. For Chyna Forney, that countdown stood at just 21 days. 2:50 p.m. Essex Street, just west of Rawson, the crack of gunfire shattered the afternoon quiet. Not just one shot, not just two. Witnesses described a barrage, like firecrackers going off in rapid succession. When the shooting stopped, over 40 shell casings littered the street. Several cars were riddled with bullet holes. And there, lying in the middle of the road, was 18-year-old Chyna Forney, with a gunshot wound to her back. Police responded within minutes. Emergency medical technicians rushed to help, desperately trying to save the young woman's life as they transported her to Albany Medical Center. But the damage was too severe. At the hospital, doctors pronounced Chyna Forney dead. The news spread through Albany like wildfire. Text messages, phone calls, social media posts. Did you hear about Chyna? Is it true? Please tell me it's not real. At Albany Leadership Charter High School, the news hit like a physical blow. Principal Karina Cook described the moment as devastating. This wasn't just any student. This was Chyna, the girl with the infectious laugh, the McDonald's manager, the dance captain, the track star. Within hours, the first candles appeared on Essex Street. By nightfall, a makeshift memorial had formed. Flowers, photos, handwritten notes, stuffed animals. Friends, classmates, and even strangers came to pay respects, many standing in stunned silence, unable to process that someone so vibrant could be gone so suddenly. A bright, shining light, Principal Cook called her in a statement to the press. The school immediately implemented crisis counseling, bringing in additional support for students and staff struggling to cope with the loss. Classes the next day were somber, with many seats empty as students stayed home to grieve. For Shan and for me, Chyna's mother, the world stopped turning that Monday afternoon. One moment she had a daughter with boundless potential 3 weeks from graduation. The next, she was identifying her child's body. "They took my baby," she told family members who gathered to support her. "They took my baby for nothing." The initial police investigation revealed a chaotic scene. Witnesses described two men firing wildly toward a group of people near a home on Essex Street. The shooters fled immediately after the gunfire, leaving destruction in their wake. What made the tragedy even more senseless was what investigators would later confirm. Chyna Forney wasn't even the intended target. She was simply in the wrong place at the wrong time, caught in a crossfire that had nothing to do with her. As night fell on Albany that Monday, a community tried to make sense of the senseless. A family began the impossible task of imagining life without their daughter. And, somewhere in the city, two gunmen who had just ended a promising young life were still at large. As the memorial on Essex Street grew, Albany police detectives worked around the clock. The crime scene told a story of chaos and recklessness. Over 40 shell casings scattered across the pavement, bullet holes in multiple vehicles, and tragically, one bullet that found 18-year-old Chyna Forney. Investigators meticulously documented every casing, every bullet trajectory, every piece of physical evidence. They collected surveillance footage from nearby homes and businesses, pieced together witness statements, and began constructing a timeline of the shooting. What emerged was disturbing. This wasn't a targeted hit on Chyna. This was something even more senseless. Two gunmen who had opened fire on a group of people, spraying bullets with apparent disregard for who might get caught in the crossfire. The level of recklessness is astounding, one detective noted. Firing that many rounds in a residential area in broad daylight? It's a miracle more people weren't killed. The investigation quickly focused on two suspects, 20-year-old Jamir Manning and 20-year-old Alvin Foy III. Both were known to law enforcement. In fact, Manning was already out on bail, facing charges for illegally possessing a weapon in a previous incident. Just 10 days after the shooting, on May 13th, police arrested Alvin Foy III. He was charged with second-degree murder, reckless endangerment, and criminal possession of a weapon. The arrest brought some relief to the community, but investigators weren't done. They knew a second shooter remained at large. As detectives dug deeper, they uncovered a critical detail. The guns used in the shooting had been illegally obtained. Neither Manning nor Foy had legal permission to possess firearms, yet they had managed to acquire weapons capable of firing dozens of rounds in seconds. The investigation also confirmed what many had feared. Chyna Forney had no connection to the intended targets. She was simply passing through the area when Manning and Foy allegedly opened fire on a group of people for reasons that had nothing to do with her. She was completely innocent, the lead detective stated. Wrong place, wrong time, in the most tragic sense possible. Court documents would later reveal that Manning and Foy had fired 31 shots toward a group of people near a home on Essex Street. One of those bullets struck Chyna in the back as she was walking in the area. Perhaps most shocking was the revelation that Chyna and at least one of her killers weren't strangers. During sentencing, Judge Roger McDonough would later tell Manning, "You and people like you are destroying your own communities. Your victim, Ms. Forney, was someone you went to school with, you grew up with." The investigation continued for months, building an airtight case against both suspects. Eventually, both Manning and Foy would face justice in court, though, as we'll see, their behavior during those proceedings would reveal just how little remorse they felt for taking a young woman's life. As the case against Manning and Foy took shape, Chyna's family waited for answers, for justice, for anything that might help make sense of their devastating loss. But nothing could bring back the daughter, sister, and friend whose life had been cut so tragically short. Before we continue with what happened in that courtroom, I want to ask, have you or someone you know ever experienced gun violence in your community? Drop a comment below. Your story might help others feel less alone in their experiences. October 21, 2022, nearly a year and a half after Chyna Forney's death, Jamir Manning stood before Judge Roger McDonough in Albany County Court and pleaded guilty to second-degree murder. By admitting his role in the shooting, Manning confirmed what investigators had pieced together. He and Alvin Foy III had fired 31 shots toward a group of people, with one bullet striking and killing Chyna. On December 9, 2022, Manning returned to court for sentencing. The courtroom was packed with Chyna's family and friends, many wearing T-shirts with her photo, all seeking some measure of justice for the young woman whose life had been cut short. When it came time for Judge McDonough to deliver Manning's sentence, the judge didn't hold back. Looking directly at the 20-year-old killer, he delivered a blistering condemnation. You and people like you are destroying your own communities. Your victim, Ms. Forney, was someone you went to school with, you grew up with. The judge sentenced Manning to 20 years to life in prison, a substantial sentence, but not the maximum possible. For Shannon Forney, Chyna's mother, even this significant sentence felt inadequate. In her victim impact statement, she told the court, "I really don't feel justice was served because at the end of the day, he still gets to be on the streets when he returns." Looking directly at Manning, she continued, "You are still able to see your mother and your daughter and talk to them, but we will never have the opportunity to talk to or see her again. All we have now are memories. You left my family in shambles, heartbroken and in pain, with an empty void that cannot be replaced or filled." While Manning had admitted his guilt, his co-defendant Alvin Foy III maintained his innocence throughout his trial. On April 3, 2023, a jury rejected Foy's claims, finding him guilty of second-degree murder. July 14, 2023, sentencing day for Alvin Foy III. The courtroom was again filled with Chyna's loved ones, many who had already endured Manning's sentencing months earlier. They came seeking closure, hoping for the maximum sentence for the second man responsible for Chyna's death. Chyna Forney, Chyna's sister, approached the stand to deliver her victim impact statement. With remarkable courage, she began to address her sister's killer directly. She was a person with an authentic soul, a beautiful personality, a loving daughter, caring sister. Nazaire began, her voice steadied despite the emotion behind her words. Alvin Foy, On May 3, 2021, you and your co-defendant, that's when it happened. Judge McDonough suddenly interrupted. Excuse me a second. Let the record reflect that the defendant is laughing during the victim impact statement. The courtroom froze. Gasps and murmurs spread through the gallery as people processed what was happening. Alvin Foy III, convicted of murdering 18-year-old Chyna Forney, was laughing as her sister spoke about the pain of losing her.
Let the record reflect that the defendant is laughing during the victim impact statement. Regardless of whether you admit to brutally murdering her, you wouldn't sit at sentencing and laugh about it.
I didn't do nothing.
That's, sir, your time to speak has ended. It's now the court's time to speak and act like this is a...
When given a chance to explain himself, Foy only dug deeper. Well, she just said something, so I had to say something. Got an ex-girlfriend over there that's mad. Put me on the scene after she said no. Judge McDonough, visibly furious, asked if Foy had anything else to say to the court. Foy's response, "Yeah, you're a biased judge and I can't wait till appeals sees my case." The judge's patience snapped. In a voice trembling with controlled rage, he delivered a scathing rebuke. Any individual with a shred of human decency who is the brother of the victim of this terrible crime would not laugh regardless of whether he wanted to assert his innocence or not. He would not laugh and make a joke and slouch in the chair and act like this is a bus stop or a bodega or a park bench. As Foy tried to interrupt again, claiming he was wrongfully convicted, Judge McDonough had heard enough. Take the defendant back into the courtroom or into the holding cell. When court resumed, Judge McDonough sentenced Alvin Foy III to the maximum possible punishment, 25 years to life in prison. Outside the courtroom, Foy's defense attorney attempted to explain his client's behavior, claiming an interaction with the victim's sister had set him off. But for Chyna's family and for the judge, there was no explanation that could justify laughing during such a solemn moment. The damage was done. In that moment of callous disrespect, Alvin Foy III had revealed exactly who he was, a man without remorse, without empathy, without, as the judge put it, a shred of human decency. June 2021. Albany Leadership Charter High School's graduation ceremony. The day Chyna Forney had worked toward for 4 years, the milestone she came just 3 weeks short of reaching. On the stage, an empty chair, a cap and gown with no graduate to wear them, a diploma with her name that would never be held in her hands. Principal Karina Cook addressed the somber crowd. Today we celebrate not just our graduates, but we honor the memory of Chyna Forney, a bright, shining light whose absence is felt deeply by all of us. This achievement would have been hers too. The school dedicated their ceremony to Chyna's memory, with many students wearing special ribbons or pins with her initials. When her name was called in the alphabetical list, a moment of silence fell over the crowd, more powerful than any speech could have been. Back on Essex Street, where bullet casings once littered the ground, a colorful mural now adorns the side of a building. Chyna's face, surrounded by vibrant colors and patterns that capture her energy and spirit. Beneath her portrait, the words, "Forever 18, forever loved." Local artists volunteered their time and talents to create this lasting tribute, working with Chyna's family to ensure it captured her essence. On weekends, you'll often find fresh flowers placed beneath it, evidence that her memory remains very much alive in the community. Each January 11th, on what would have been her birthday, Albany Leadership Charter posts tributes on social media, keeping her memory alive for new students who never had the chance to know her. The school established a scholarship in her name, awarded annually to a graduating senior who exemplifies Chyna's leadership qualities and determination. For Shannon Forney's Chyna's mother, the pain hasn't diminished with time or with the sentencing of her daughter's killers. After the trials concluded, she spoke to local media about the hollow nature of justice in cases like these. They say there's justice, but there isn't really. My daughter is gone forever. These men will eventually get out of prison. They took everything from us. Her future, her dreams, the children she might have had, the lives she would have touched as a nurse. How is any sentence long enough for that? The Tone Setters Step team where Chyna served as captain, now begins each performance with a special step routine she created, calling it Chyna's Opener, ensuring that she leads them still, even in absence. The Too Hot For You dance team established an annual showcase in her honor, featuring performances from dance groups throughout Albany. Proceeds go to anti-violence programs focused on teens and young adults. But perhaps the most meaningful legacy is less visible: the conversations her death sparked about gun violence in communities across America, about young lives ended too soon, about the ripple effects of a single moment of violence that forever changes dozens, even hundreds of lives. Chyna Forney was 18 years old, a manager, a dancer, a runner, a leader, a daughter, a sister, a friend. She had dreams of becoming a nurse, of traveling, of making a difference. One bullet took all of that away. If this story moved you, please consider subscribing to True Crime Malice for more cases that need to be told. And drop a comment below, sharing your thoughts on what we can do to prevent youth violence in our communities. Your voice matters in this conversation. Chyna Forney's life may have been cut tragically short, but through our remembrance, through our actions, through our commitment to creating safer communities, her impact continues. In the words of those who knew her best, she was definitely the life of the party. May we honor her memory by ensuring no more young lives are lost to senseless violence.